Hello and welcome to the MegabyteMe podcast series, the show where technology meets humanity. This podcast is about the why behind the work, why we build, why we lead, and why we stay committed to serving others even when the road is long. We go beyond the noise, beyond the buzzwords, beyond the politics to tell American broadband stories. These are stories of integrity, accountability, family, joy, and the quiet victories that come from doing the hard things with heart. And today's guest, Andy Berke, embodies that mission. Mr. Berke is the former administrator for the USDA's Rural Utilities Service, where he led efforts to expand broadband access in some of the country's most rural and underserved regions. Prior to that, Mr. Berke served as the mayor of Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he helped the city become a national model for publicly owned fiber networks and digital innovation, being one of the first gig cities in the country. He's a lifelong public servant who's made it his mission to connect people, not just through technology, but through collaboration. I'm proud to say that I know this individual largely because of the things I've learned from him. He's known how to blend policy expertise with local level empathy, ensuring that decisions made in Washington reflect the needs of real families and real communities. He's a constant advocate for the idea that access to the internet is access to the economy, to education, and a better future. So today, I'm really honored to have Mr. Andy Berke join us because he is someone who has helped to write this chapter in America's broadband story with accountability, heart, and purpose. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Berke. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
Happy to have you. So how was your trip out?
It was really easy. This is a beautiful area. We got to go up and I met your amazing family, got some concerts last night, got to meet some animals. What more can you ask for in a trip?
That's right. A little serenade in the mountains with some animals and families always.
Yeah, that was perfect. It was a great way to start. And, you know, I texted with my daughters last night when I got back to the hotel room because seeing your fantastic 4 children makes me think about, you know, my kids, and they're a little older and I miss those times. And so definitely jealous to see you and your wife going through this stage because as I told your wife last night, like every stage for us has been amazing. Not every day has been perfect, but every stage has been wonderful.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come out and join us on the MegabyteMe podcast. You know, as we were sharing yesterday, the intent here is really to just dive into the reality of the work that folks are doing in this space and really shine light on the fact that there are really folks out there with good hearts trying to solve this problem. You know, with that, we are tackling a lot of challenges out there. And as much as we want to talk about technology on this show, we also want to talk about the human elements. And so, you know, one of the things that I'd like for our listeners to understand is just a little bit about your background. You know, you've been a lifelong public servant. You've spent time at the federal level. You've spent time at the state level. You know, can you tell me a little bit about that work and what had brought you to doing that work?
Yeah, I think that it's been an interesting journey. Now that I've kind of reflect on some of it, it's interesting because a lot of the places weren't where I expected to go, and I never thought that this would be the journey that I was on, but I got here. So I think it really started in the sense that I loved politics and I loved government. That was always my favorite class. Nobody in my family was in government, had ever been in government, ever wanted to be in government, ever thought it was a good idea to be in government.
Which to share that.
Yeah, which I have continued to hear over the course of a long period of time. But I really was doing my work. I went back home after I finished law school because I wanted to be more of a part of a community, and I felt like if I went to a big city, I wouldn't have that opportunity. And then I loved what I was doing, but I thought to myself, you know, I want to figure out if there's a way for me to help at scale, to do something a little bit bigger than what I was doing, even though I did think even in my day job that I was helping people. And I was just like, I'm just going to run for office. No, again, nobody in my family had ever done it before. And I'm going to get involved. I'm going to do it. And we'll just see where this goes. I'm going to go as far as I can, and then make some other decisions. And so there wasn't some grand plan to be the mayor of Chattanooga. Definitely not. That was never.
It wasn't on your tenure.
It wasn't even 60 or 90 days before I started running for mayor. It wasn't on my agenda. So these things, life takes you in interesting places.
That it does. Well, I think, I want to share a story. The first time I think you and I had the chance to work together, you just come into on the federal side over at NTIA, and I think we were chatting about this a little bit yesterday, and we had sat down. We just finished up an interesting meeting, and we had sat down for dinner, and I'd spent some time as a former elected official for my tribe as well, and I remember asking you the question because you were in there. You had not quite made that transition over to USDA. And I remember asking you, hey, Andy, so I was in politics, and I always have that interest in wanting to get back into it, right? Do you ever have that itch? And I remember you pausing me and saying, Adam, what makes you think I ever left politics? And literally the next week you were running RUS.
Yeah. Well, sometimes maybe I know some things that other people don't know. There are people who think of politics as a bad word, and I totally get why that's the case. For me, I'm somebody who is a student of this stuff, and so I think about politics as potentially being greatness when it's done right, and that is, how do you talk to people and understand what's going on with them and put out a vision and a thought that they will then buy into, that gets you elected into office, and then use the momentum of what people want and need to enact change, and then, use that thing that you've done to get reelected. Like, those are the places where, when people say the word politics, that's what I think of. I realize that other people think of something different.
Yeah.
But as somebody who has been doing this for quite a while, like, that's the best version. At least that's what I aspire to. Yeah. I'm not saying we'll achieve it every day. And so when I say, like, oh, I like to be in this stuff, what I'm talking about is those are the pieces that I like to stack on top of each other and then say, okay, this is what's going on. And certainly what we were doing in the broadband world and the high-speed internet world was a great example of how you put those pieces in place to enact real change that makes people's lives better.
Right. Well, I think, that does make me just ask you the question. I can see that you see the direction where you want to go with this. I love the way you described it, because I think a lot of folks out there that have shared similar roles with you, right, have that lens. But I guess what I really want to understand is why do you keep doing this work, right? Because it's an ongoing need, right? We've definitely seen some real challenges, despite party politics. We've seen challenges in general on the connectivity space on all sides, and it's taken some real champions to continue to kind of dust themselves off. So why do you keep coming back to the table now?
There is a clear reason. So I am mission oriented, and when I was mayor, one of the things that I did was, most every time I talked to somebody, I would go over what we put forth as the city's mission, which is to break down the barriers that prevent people from living the life they want in our city. So our goal wasn't to help them over the barrier. Our goal was to break down the barriers that prevented people from living the life that they wanted, not we wanted, in our city. Okay? And so the way that I think about all this stuff is that, because I'm a religious person, is that God put something special in each and every one of us and distributed that equally. But we do not distribute resources and attention and the focus of institutions evenly. And so as somebody who is involved in that work, my job is to make sure that we correct that imbalance and that we ensure that everybody can find that special place of what they have been given and can do that. Like, when I was a mayor, all I could think about was, there are people in the city who could be an amazing dancer, and they're not given that opportunity. There are people in the city who need to learn how to read because they want to read the Bible, they want to read, to their kids, they want to read whatever that is. There are people in our city who don't have workforce training, and they want to get a job that allows them to provide in a serious way for their family. So, it can be high-minded. It could also just be like, hey, I want to be able to cook with my family, and the place to find the best recipes is on the internet. I want to take a piano lesson, and there's nobody within 100 miles to give me a piano lesson. So I need to do that online. I need to get my grandmother to go to the doctor. There's nobody to go see, but instead of me taking 2 days off of work to drive her there, do something, and then have to go back the next week and do it all over again, instead we're going to do this on the internet. The high-speed internet is just a tool, but in my mind, it's to allow people to live the life that they want.
So thank you for explaining that, because that makes a whole lot more sense to me. But it also triggers me to ask an even deeper question. That the passion that you have, and I think everybody just saw the passion, which is why I love you, Andy. But I want to know where that comes from. Like there's something in your life that has happened, or there's got to be some role models, because everything you're describing as a person that sees challenges in a community and you bring heart to the solution in bringing and coalescing people together to solve problems. In my life, I'm also religious as well, believe in God, been blessed with some amazing parents. My folks have been kind of that foundation for me, but there have also been moments in my life as well. So I'm curious for you, where have you gotten this compassion for others? Because as you said, God has an element of this, but there's also those other folks that have been put in our lives. So I'm curious where that's come from for you.
Yeah, it's just like you're saying, like the biggest place where that comes from is my family and probably my dad, my granddad. So my dad and my granddad and my uncle had a law firm together. They represent people, not corporations. That was one of their big things. And so we would go out to dinner, and somebody would say to my dad, like while we're having dinner, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but a couple of years ago I was having this problem, and I came to see you, and you helped me out. You didn't even charge me for whatever it was, and you gave me some good advice. And then I just want you to know, like, that advice, I took it, and now things are going a lot better for me. I just wanted to say thanks to you for doing this. Wow. And as a kid, if you're 6, 7, 8 years old, like, that is a huge thing, because first of all, it's your dad, but second of all, it's this role model. And so when I said earlier, my dad didn't think that politics was a good thing, it's because he thought to himself, this is like the way you can do things is you help people by making sure they have access to the law, or giving them good advice, or helping them with their problems. He thought that he does that. I don't want to say he thought he does it like he didn't do it, but right. He's like, this is this, and I get to come home and spend nights with my family instead of going to an event, right. Or right. traveling around the world. I get to do this and do it for people who are meaningful to me. And so I think that I practiced law with them. I saw that, I felt that. And that's why I said, like, I wanted to see how I could do that, not for one person at a time, but to do that for 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000.
Makes sense. I think that's awesome. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that about your dad. I actually too had a chance to work with my mom actually in politics. And I got to say, things that you can learn from those that have come before you that really love on you is really an amazing opportunity to grow and really build those values within your family. Yeah. And now it makes sense. What about your mom?
Yeah, my mom is where a lot of my drive comes from. Because as I said, my dad, he had this thing, he loved to do it. My mom was much more of the person who pushed to make sure that whatever could be done better, or whatever you could get more of, you got more of. She grew up, her mom and dad got divorced when she was very young, in a time when that was
Not a thing.
not a usual thing. Yeah. She was in Florida, and it was a place where her mom was a shop clerk. It was seasonal work back then, because there was hardly anybody in the summer or when it got warmer, and so they would move around a lot to make a living, and struggled to do that. My mom didn't have a relationship with her father, so I think she was much more of the one pushing.
Absolutely.
To do things. So a lot of the ambition pieces of do more, try more, go farther, that comes from my mom.
That's awesome. Have you noticed a trend? I'm going to divert a little bit, but it's along the same lines. Have you noticed a trend as we've been working, for the last couple decades to help connect folks in different facets? Have you noticed a trend that women tend to be leading the way in a lot of these spaces? Have you noticed that?
Oh, it's absolutely true.
Is it the mother? I mean, it's that drive that I want to see success for my kids is kind of where I've put it in my brain, but I'm curious if you see.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many places where you see this. A lot of it is just having had more opportunities over the years to do that. I don't know that I'm quite understand all the reasons why these things happen, but definitely, I went to fiber conference or broadband conference not very long ago, and when you're in a room with a bunch of only guys, you definitely feel it, and you're like, well, but I know that there are incredible women leaders. I know that, for example, that NTCA has an entire women in broadband group. They came to Washington, D.C., and we need to make sure, all of us, that we're recognizing the different things that all kinds of people and communities bring to this, because ensuring that only one type of people is making decisions is a good way to make sure that a lot of problems are left out of the solution business.
That's right. Well, it was a little bit leading in why I asked that. You're also a father, right? And as I am, and you're a girl dad. I've asked guests since we started this production to bring different things in that remind them of who they are and their values. And so last night we were chatting again, and something came to mind. So I'm hoping you would share a little bit with us about what you.
No. So I have this bracelet that my younger daughter made me. I think one of your daughters made that for you too. So
we got we'll get the comp bracelets there.
Yeah. So so my daughter, I will admit that the first one I guilted her into making, but this one, after that one broke, she made this one without any prompting from me, and I think it is great to have this on here. But this is also a daughter. We share a birthday, and actually my very.
How did you pull that off?
Well, when it first happened, I was like, I don't know about this whole thing, and then it's been the greatest thing to share that day. Awesome. And in my very first campaign commercial, she was 3 or 4 years old, and the end of the commercial, I'm sitting in a chair like this, and one by one, my family members come behind me. And the last one that comes in is my daughter, who I share the birthday with. She's 4 years old, and she says, "Tell them we have the same birthday." Like, that's at the end of the commercial. So I'm sure that her friends on YouTube enjoy that very much, and she doesn't enjoy her 4-year-old self saying that. But I think, my kids, my family are very important to me, as they are to lots of people. And I'm so proud of the things that they have done and are going to do. But that's why when I saw your family last night, and this tends to just be my sentimental self, is like, I think about those amazing times that you're having right now, And the more time that I get to spend with my daughters, the better my life is.
Absolutely. Well, I got to tell you, I think, first off, thanks for the kindness you shared with my family. The kids love you.
It's great.
But, as we all do. But one of the things that I think folks would benefit from, a lot of our listeners here are in government, they're in industry, they're out helping to connect folks, but we're all out a lot. How have you, what advice do you have for folks, or what tools have you been able to lever to keep yourself grounded within your family as you're bebopping around the country? Because I've found that difficult. I've talked to plenty of folks, we go to these shows and you almost build like this family of people outside of your family. And, and I know a lot of us are sharing in this, but while a lot of us are also, we're trying to help get these things done, but you're also trying to balance the home life. How have you been able to do that? Because you had an added layer when you add the political components on top.
Yeah, I don't think I'm any kind of role model on this. And I wish that I could say, people have asked me the balance question before and all kind, and I just don't know that I have a great answer to it, because I've tried to do what I felt was right in a given moment, and I've never really striven for balance. That's not I don't know. It just doesn't. That's not a word that does that, because it seems artificial. And there are moments where things should be out of balance, and because things are needed. And so, the only thing that I will tell you is, in those moments where things seemed the most challenging in terms of the demands on my time, at least, I've tried to make sure that my family understands why that's the case, and the effect that is hopefully going to have on people in our world, because of that, and because it's not all about us. It's not all about my family. As much as I love my family, that's not, we're not the center of the universe.
Sure.
And we should all understand that too. I mean, they need to be the most important thing to me, and they are. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean we're the center of everything. Yeah. And so I remember the first time this happened, somebody sent me a very kind note, because I was in the state Senate at the time, and I didn't do very much, but this was in the 2008 recession, and she was about to get her house repossessed, and she couldn't get anybody at a certain large bank, I won't say the name of it, on the telephone. And I just called somebody at this large bank, and I said, "Can you give this woman a call?" And they called her and gave her some structure to her payments, and everything turned out okay. And she wrote me a very kind note about how her cats and her dog and whatever, they had a home, because that, like, all I did was make a but I took that home, and I'm like, this is why I'm in Nashville. This is why we do the stuff. And my wife was always, just like, hey, if you're going to do this, don't go up there. There was this reception that they used to have when I was in the state Senate, that was like the big shrimp reception. And she's like, don't be there to eat the big shrimp. Like if you're going to be away from our family and you're going to drive,
I've heard about some of these.
If you're going to do this stuff, then at least go try to do something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, making the dent, right? Making that lasting impact is definitely one of those things that I think we all are striving towards. And, with that, as you start to move your way through the challenges, right? Ensuring that we're keeping our family in mind, we're having joy as we're doing our work and having those subtle victories. The reality is we also have our critics, and one of the other things that I've started to ask guests that come onto this show is, because I want to get past the noise, I want to get past the politics. People are people at the end of the day. We all bleed, put our pants on, we all heard that. But I would like to know, I've asked everybody to say something nice about the people that may criticize them. So Andy, what would you say to the people that have maybe shown some light on things that you agreed or didn't agree with, but how have you, is there something nice that you could say about others?
Yeah. Sometimes they're right. That's the nicest thing that I can say about the people who criticize me. When I was mayor, I tell staff all the time, because when you're in local government and you've worked, with your tribe, like any kind of local position like that, people know every single detail of what you're doing. And you're right next to them.
Yeah, there's no hiding at the gas station.
I always say to people, like, you can say anything to me because there's nothing that hadn't been said to me worse while I was trying to get some fruit.
Sure.
That's so, what I would say to my staff all the time is the only criticism that hurts is the one that's right. And, you have to listen to people and you have to figure out and take a second, even when it hurts, to say, is this right or is it wrong? Because again, sometimes the reason it hurts is because it's true. And you didn't have the process that you want. You didn't execute like you wanted to. It was a flawed conception of what you were trying to do. And all those things have happened. Sometimes criticism's wrong. And you should listen and understand at that moment too. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm a pretty level-headed person in general. And so I'm pretty good at like listening to the stuff. But it's still, especially easy in politics, there's a foxhole mentality.
Absolutely.
Because there's stuff coming at you, and you're literally in a competitive environment. Constantly.
Yes.
And particularly during election times, you're in a competitive environment. And so one way to build a team is to get in the foxhole together, and people are taking shots at you, and you are in the foxhole together, and you got to push back on the people taking shots at you. Mm-hmm. And so given that that's the way that you approach the world, it's hard to then pull it back and say, like, let's meet at the line. This time, let's not do that. And I think figuring out when you and the team are in the foxhole together, and let's take a deep breath and meet our critics in the right place. That's part of the challenge of leadership.
Well, I think that also, it makes Tennessee, right? It makes a ton of sense as to how you ended up being the mayor where you did, Chattanooga, because I think you just really did a great job of articulating your approach. You got to listen. I was amazed at you and I have had to be on. We were both on the same side of some issues, and there were some times we had to be on opposite sides of issues. And then for what it's worth, we're still sitting here laughing and chatting.
Yep.
But I think that, one of the things that I saw in my experience here over the last, decade in different layers of government was just exactly what you said, the willingness to pause for a second and stop shelling everybody and just go, can we just talk for a second? Is this really a political issue, or can we just have a people conversation for a second?
Yeah.
And I really appreciated your leadership, in the last role you were in, because you led like that. It gave me some comfort knowing that even if we weren't, because of the nuances, even if we couldn't be on the same page for some of this stuff, it was good to know that I had somebody on the other side of the table that was fair.
Well, same thing, obviously, for you. But these things are hard.
They are,
and we are all flawed individuals, and so we do the best that we can.
That's right.
And then some of this I think too is as I said, I grew up with a lawyer for a father and a lawyer for a grandfather, and they had very much this: we fight during the day for people, and then we come home at night and we have dinner with the family. And by the way, the next day, the people we are fighting might be the people who are on the same side with us. Yeah. And so they just had that. They had that mentality, and maybe I have some of that too. Yeah. But I think I also very much believe that, like, with the difficulty of some of the issues that we face, we should give grace to people to be like, I know you're doing the best that you can, and I know you're fighting for the things and the people that you want to do for. I'm doing the same thing, and we try to get there. And then, there are some people who, unfortunately, you learn not to give that grace to because you don't think that they are coming in good faith.
Yep.
But when people are coming in good faith, like, we just all need to take a second and try to do the best we can.
So you definitely had some challenging moments here over the last couple of years. Well, in politics, you probably had plenty of challenging moments in your career. But can you just share an example of where your values were really tested year over? If you have a recent example, that'd be great. Because just for what it's worth, I've had a chance to see a little bit behind the curtain, and I got to say, the role that you were in and some of the others that had a chance to work with is one that, a career guy was thinking, I'd love to have a role like that one day. And after seeing what I saw, for what it's worth, you guys took a lot. You were kind of that wedge in between, the people issues, the political issues, and then all the other interests that are coming in, and you were really caught in the middle having to navigate that. Again, I respected the way that you did that. Do you mind sharing an instance where your values were tested?
Well, I think they're tested a lot. Asking about this more recent example, I think is a little tough because I hate if you'll let me go back a little bit.
Absolutely.
And there's a reason that I'm doing this, and it's because it's very much on my mind. So I apologize for getting a little far afield, but as we record this, we're a few weeks away from the 10th anniversary of a terrorist attack we had in Chattanooga. And I've been doing a bunch of interviews about that. And this is a very dramatic moment, very impactful moment in my life and in the city's history, where 4 Marines and a sailor were killed in Chattanooga, and I spent a lot of time. And I think that, there are moments that we face that we don't expect to ever see. Something like that in my hometown, in these places, and trying to figure out how to approach this event. Unfortunately, because when you're mayor, you see these things happening across the globe, and we were just a few weeks after the attack in Charleston at Mother Emanuel Church. I had been thinking about that, so how to actually respond was on my mind. But those things test you in every way, these really intense and severe circumstances. But these things happen, as you know, and as we could certainly talk about in the high-speed internet world. We were sued about our network. We were sued about expansion. We've been sued about various things. So I think that you constantly are having to figure out, am I in the right place? Am I responding in the right way? Is this the stuff? Am I fighting too much, fighting too little? What values? It's not just your value to test it. It's like, what's the right value here? That's, to me, a lot of the question is like, is this a question of like, we're trying to be fair? Or is this a question of like, we're trying to be compassionate, which might be different than fair? Like, there's all kinds of things that you have to figure out.
Yeah. We used to, my mom and I used to joke about this because I've done a tribal government with her. And we used to have a saying that it's, because we debate policy and we debate our laws that we were looking at. And we finally landed on, it's really hard sometimes to legislate morality. You really got to leave people to themselves to some degree because you can't legislate everything through. And that really brought me to a point in recognizing that, the collaboration with community, the open ears, the ability to make sure that as you're passing policy that people want, that it actually fits the community and what they're shaped as.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll give you a great example. So I think especially, let's see if I can tie this to the broadband world. This might be a stretch, but I remember
It all fits, Andy. It all fits.
I had this brilliant guy who worked for me. His name is James McKissick, and James, super smart, and had experienced in various ways discrimination and difficulty through his life. He was a senior advisor to me in city government, and I would run around saying, our mission is to break down the barriers that prevent people from living the life of their choosing, right? So James would say, well, what if the life of their choosing impacts me?
Yeah.
And what if the things that we are doing that allows people to live their life is a problem or makes our world worse?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I had a great answer for that. But this goes to, I think, this issue of technology in general.
That's right.
And like, okay, there are moments where I'm like, I've spent a long time trying to make sure that people have greater access to the internet. But, right, let's put the big asterisk out there.
Yeah, but what does that look
What now, like, is this some, have we really made sure that people have this great opportunity because of misinformation and disinformation and scams and all kinds of other things that are going on? And so it is easy to look at this stuff and say, and have to test yourself of like, okay, this was my goal and this was my method. And now we really need to ask ourselves, did those two things match up?
That's right. Well, let's just tease this a little bit more, because on this topic, we might as well talk about AI for a second, and the way that folks are considering, because there's a lot of folks that are looking at right now building AI policy in their states. There's discussion at the federal level, right? We all know that. And there is a lot of discussion around how do you manage these networks that have been built now with this amazing new tool that's at the table. So, what do you think the future looks like, and what it should be shaped, or how do you think it should be shaped now that we're adding this new technology? Because folks are having that discussion. How do we legislate? I mean, I guarantee you're getting phone calls on this.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a silver bullet.
Absolutely.
I think that the way I try to start with any problem is with principles. Like, I'm a principle thinker. So like, it's just like we were talking about, is like, what's the right value? Is like, well, what are we trying to do? And, so I just start going through the values chain and the principle chain of like, okay, well, what are we trying to achieve? And like, people's lives should be better at the end as a result of the technology, not worse. That's right. And like, let's just start there.
Yep.
And not just the values of a few people or a certain segment of people, but for all of us, or at least as many of us as we can put into the ark together. Mm-hmm. And so I worry sometimes that when, like, I hear people saying things like, we need to win this race. And then I look up and the people who are saying that own the racetrack. Right. And so I look at this stuff. I say, okay, like, we need to be better off at the end than we were now. I'm very serious about this. And then, we can't use, I think, old-fashioned or 20th century type of notions to think about what are 21st and 22nd maybe century problems. Right. And the thing that because I don't have silver bullets is like, we need to have really honest discussions and be very clear about what we're trying to achieve, and policy needs to play a big role in what we see going forward, because this idea that technology by itself is going to bring us some nirvana is not, it's not true for me, at least. And that the most important thing that we can do is be frank with each other about what are the potential possibilities, what are the potential pitfalls, how do we maximize the possibilities and minimize the pitfalls, and this idea of like, well, we just have to, do these things because somebody else might do them first. That doesn't lead to great outcomes for our country.
Yeah, beating somebody the economics and the end result is a pile of bodies sitting behind you never is a good outcome.
Yeah, like there's all kinds of things to say, well, somebody might do this first, so I have to do it before them. Well, but how do we know that at the end of the day, either of these things is a good result? I think all those places are where, again, I've been working on technology problems now for decades. I'm not averse to technology. We just have to be pretty clear-eyed and honest about what those things are, and then try to figure out what the right approach is.
Well, I think that's another. We've had the benefit of traveling on the road together and meeting some of the communities that I work in, and I'm amazed at the fear that still exists. Is because a lot of these communities in rural America in general have not had a degree of service that they've been able to really embrace what's out there today in technology, and they're scared. And a lot of that is coming from, if we bring this service or this technology in, are we going to lose who we are as a community or as a culture? And so I appreciate you giving that feedback on how you're thinking about this, because everybody is processing this right. We have these libraries being built, for each of these platforms. How are those libraries being informed, and who's informing them? And then what are those interests around those? And it seems like folks are making even a larger push now to even localize some of this stuff, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, I think it's also important to remember that at least when you start talking about things like generative AI, we're very new to the experience, and so this idea that like like all these things, whatever it is today, you think about where we were in some technology in 2000, well, just think about the broadband world, where we were in 1996 versus where we are 30 years later. And this is my adult lifetime. This is not like, generations of American experience. This is in my adult lifetime. And so like and those cycles are speeding up.
They are.
And so in 10 years, in 15 years, what's going to be the case? And we need to make good decisions today, because the farther you get down the track, the harder it is to get the train to turn around.
Right. Well, and while we're on this topic, let's chat a little bit about the onset of the digital economy. The reality is we're seeing all this infrastructure going out. We're seeing this technology improving. There's still going to be a whole bunch of people that can't afford service, at least from how we've been seeing things coming in different facets, right? We've seen subsidy being taken back and other things that folks had planned with. And so it makes me want to ask you a question, because you tackled this issue, which is, you were able to deliver 300 symmetrical service to families for essentially nothing, for free. And that makes a lot of people scratch their head going, how the heck are they able to do something like that? How is government able to pull that off? So I'm hoping that you could share a little bit about some of those other strategies, because these tools and this technology is coming. There's an expectation that the public is going to be engaging in these technology solutions, but not everybody can afford it. So how did you tackle the affordability issue? Because I think other folks are going to want to learn from.
Well, I think what I saw pretty clearly in Chattanooga was that we had this incredible resource, gigabit symmetrical, and we were the first city to do it. And we started to see interest from industry and all kinds of digital economy stuff. And we were running hackathons and reverse pitches and, all this stuff. And you got in those rooms and there were the same people or the same kinds of people in those rooms. And so pretty clearly for us, it was a question of like, okay, this is not long-term sustainable. Like, one of two things is going to happen. Either like we're just going to create a worse divide, or people are just going to be really resentful and try to tear everything down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we and I spent most of the rest of the decade trying to figure out how we ensured that people had the skills that they needed and the financial support that would allow them to do those things. And so the whole idea of digital equity for us in Chattanooga was born at the beginning of the last decade, and spent, as I said, so many years doing this. And so we had Tech Goes Home, and I remember first time I went to a class there. So it was to teach people how to get an email address, how to pay your bills online, the basics of things. And I remember went to my first class right after we'd started funding it. And there was a woman named Gail, and Gail showed the class, got up in front. She had been going for several weeks. These were in churches and preschools across the city. And she showed people how she had made a flyer on her computer, and then it was for a speaker at the church, and then she had printed it out and given to people, and everybody clapped. And listen, those are moments that just get sealed in your brain of like, wow, like the hair on the back of my neck, even talking about it now. This was probably 2014 or 15, like that's just, and so people want to participate. And then, we kind of saw, okay, now some of those people want to learn how to do advanced spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. Okay, now some of those people want to know how to do a little coding. Now some of those people want to learn how to do real coding. And so I started to see this real ladder of entry points for people. So that's thing one. And so I think the skills piece is way underrated. Then the second thing that we did was really tackle the affordability. And so, this was a city resource. There's a long story to this. I'll give you the short version, which was we were trying to make it more affordable. We did like $26.99, and there were some state laws that we thought prevented us from, or some people thought prevented us from going farther down than that.
I love your mind.
And so eventually we by the time we kept doing this work, and what happened was this was all through our service was through EPB, which was a city utility, and the leadership there, after years of us doing the work, had it just digital equity ingrained in them, and that's the culture change that you want. And the day that COVID hit, that I declared a state of emergency, I called the CEO of the utility, and I said, I'm going to come over to your office. And he said, okay, which not something often that the mayor calls and says, I'm coming over to your office, as opposed to come to mine. And I walked over there, and I sat down, and we had been having some, we had had difficult discussions, not with this CEO, but with the prior one about this topic. And I said, I think it's time for us to go to zero. And David Wade, CEO, who's an amazing guy, said, I agree. We got to figure this out. And so we put our heads together. What we determined was that we needed to do some fundraising for the upfront costs. And if we did some fundraising for the upfront costs, adding one person to the EPB network had a marginal zero type of addition to their bottom line. So we went out and we did it.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully, I'm just going to put it out there. Is it all right if some of the local and state folks can reach out to you, Andy, for some advice?
Of course.
On tackling this?
Of course.
I know a lot of folks are, this, again, we are where we are as a country. I don't want to get into the weeds on the politics of it, but the reality is that there's the subsidies that I know a lot of folks have been planning for just aren't there anymore, or they're being retooled, or see where this all goes. But in the interim, local governments, state governments are still trying to figure out how to make the sustainability work. So if you guys have questions, I would suggest calling Mr. Andy Berke on ways to come up with some sustainability models.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're doing this work. If you're doing the work because you actually want people to be the best version of themselves, the version of themselves that they want to be. If you have a socket in your wall, but you don't have anything to plug into it, or you can't afford to turn it on, man, it just doesn't make a difference.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, let's turn in and lean in a little bit on the technology side of it. Obviously we're seeing a lot of advancement on, as we've just been talking about, generative AI, but you also had a unique lens over there in your career, but in the last place you were at, and looking at Power 2. And, what do you see the role is between the power systems that are out there or coming and the broadband networks that are being deployed today?
Yeah, well, not long after I started at the Rural Utility Service, some of the co-ops, which are really the biggest customers for RUS, were started by President Roosevelt, and that they started, RUS, which was in the REA, Rural Electrification Administration, basically started co-ops. So they're still tied together, and some of the leaders were coming to me saying, somebody's asking for 300 megawatts of energy, and they want it like as soon as possible, and what's the pricing, and how's this going to affect our system? And they were coming to us, and I don't know. We're trying to figure this out together. And so, I kind of saw what we've been hearing about for the last year on this data center thing. We started seeing that, and when I was still at RUS, right at the beginning, because with the inquiries were being made, and it just shows you that the AI is going to move at the speed of electrons, is the phrase. Like, if we can't get this stuff built, then it really does affect the way that technology is going to evolve. And also, I think the kind of places where you're going to see these things happen. And so internet, water, and electricity, those are the three things that RUS does.
Yep.
That's what you need to do these data centers. And again, the government and policymakers and companies need to figure out good solutions that don't put the burden on ratepayers. That's really important. Yeah. And that strengthen, not weaken the grid, so that the country can benefit from this, and not see the energy all going towards one kind of technology owned by a very small group of people.
Right. Now, I saw something out there about the need for water around some of these as well. Did you see or come across any instances? I should have asked you that too, because you also need the cooling components around frankly, both types of infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you mind talking a little bit about how you came across some of the water?
Yeah, we heard all those pieces together. I think, we'll continue to see. I think they're trying to find solutions on the cooling side and figure out ways to do that a little bit better. But I was in Arizona several times. I was in a neighborhood where people were buying houses for $175,000 that didn't have water to the house, and I was just, this whole
like on the
neighborhood
reservation.
Yeah, well, they're having to, they're having to go to a place to pump water. So, I think that it's easy for those who aren't in this world to just think like, well, this is a resource that everybody has that's not that's ever replenishing. And if you've driven around Arizona to the Tohono O'odham tribe, and you can see how dry it is out there. If you've kind of talked to people in Georgia who are fighting over water with others, like these are critical policy questions that people need to tackle, and they are barriers to us achieving what we want to achieve.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting next couple of years to see, how all of these resources and utilities intersect with each other. But I do want to ask you just a really simple question. Maybe it's a complicated answer, but
usually the simple questions are the hardest answers.
Do we have enough tape? Yeah, no. So Andy, I'm going to ask you another question. Right? We have all these utilities coalescing together. We have the natural resource challenges the country is going to need to tackle. There's there's no avoiding this. In your mind, and I understand that there's no silver bullet to any one of these. But if you had your way for a day, right? It's the king for a day kind of thing. How would you, or where would you like to see all of this end? Like, what's the end state in your mind? What does, I guess, success or perfection look like if these initiatives can coalesce and come together and we can all figure this out?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. Number one is we have to figure out how to adapt quicker and build faster. We have a history in our country of running roughshod over local communities, treating people who don't have a lot of power poorly, and that has justifiably caused us to examine our processes and the ways that we go about this. So we have to figure out, like, okay, we can do both these things together. We can talk to and consider and make sure that we communicate with people in local communities and people who may not have a lot of political power, and we have to adapt quicker and build things because those communities, same communities, will be affected if we don't make infrastructure progress in these next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's kind of piece one. Piece two is we had to put price and affordability for people at the upper scale of what we consider. There's debates going on in our country right now about, tax credits and, subsidies and all kinds of things. And all this is going on at the same time when we know at the end of the day, what are the things that people have to pay for every single month? One of them is their electric bill. A lot of people pay for their high-speed internet service provider. Like, these are monthly challenges for people. And if we make them more expensive, then that is hurting the affordability that people are craving today. And then the last piece is, I think that there are ways for us to do all this so that we help our economy. When we go out and we build a high-speed internet network, somebody's climbing that pole. Yeah. There's somebody who is digging that trench. On the energy side, like, these projects, when we funded seeded about $40 billion worth of new clean energy projects around the country. Like, there are human beings who are out there who are doing that work, and we have to continue to put that workforce development and workforce piece into this to keep Americans on the job and working, because that's the great thing about infrastructure, right? Is when you get, it's kind of goes back to the first answer, which I know is what you really wanted, is to pull everything together, is like, how do you create that virtuous cycle of like, we build things that makes things a little cheaper and easier, maybe cleaner. Then we employ some people, they can afford more. That's that cycle that we really need.
I love it. I love the vision. That obviously, I love your body of work. One thing before we start to wrap that I also ask our guests to think about is there's a lot of people that are now coming into this space that are new to this space, that weren't in the space. What advice do you have for new entrants, for the folks that are maybe just graduating out of school or not, and that are coming into the field as maybe with a construction company as well, or one of the trades? What advice do you have to somebody that is looking to participate in the direction of all this infrastructure?
I would just say people first. I remember having a discussion with a state official about some road work, and he said, well, these cars will go faster if we do it that way. And my response was, yeah, there are people in those cars. Like, those are the people that we the cars don't matter. It's the people in the cars that matter. And so I think anybody in this space, like, yes, the trenching is important, the construction is all that stuff, but it's all toward the people. And if you just always say to yourself, well, the people don't matter, I gotta get this thing done, then you kind of miss the point. If you say, like, again, back to this point of building faster, is like, how do we build faster in a way that still helps, represents, listens to people? Yeah. Then these things shouldn't be in opposition. They should be part of the same question. And that's just what I would urge people new in this business to think about.
Awesome. Well, I guess as we kind of close this out, one thing I wanted to leave open for you is anything that we hadn't talked about that's on your mind. I mean, you've seen a lot here over the last few years, and you obviously have a unique lens, and we can't cover everything in the time that we have. But I wanted to make sure I left some space here for you to just say the thing that's on your heart or on your mind that you think people need to hear about, the space, the infrastructure, the people.
Yeah, I think the one place that I would just add a little bit is, I spent much of the last decade trying to figure out, or trying to push people to think about high-speed internet in particular as a universal resource, as something that everybody needs, like a road or like water or like electricity. And there is, with some of the debate going on right now, the possibility that we're going to, it seemed like we were there, and there's the possibility that we might backslide. And I think that just because COVID and the stresses that it brought have abated doesn't mean that we are in a world again where people should have two different kinds of technology and resources. And we have to continue to say to ourselves, if we give more people greater access to better infrastructure, that will benefit them and will also benefit our country.
Awesome. Well, Andy, I want to again just thank you for the closing comments, and also for your leadership over the last 2 decades in this space, and your contribution to the American broadband story as a whole. And more importantly, thank you for being a guest here with me on the MegabyteMe podcast.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you, Adam.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out this podcast. And I'd like to do a quick thank you to our sponsors, the Hunter Mazzetti Vineyard, Ready.net. Thank you so much for your time and support of the show.